You're not going to want to miss this episode of the AI Show where we talk all about the basics of prompt engineering with Azure OpenAI. Make sure you tune in. Hello and welcome to this episode of the AI Show where we're talking all about the basics of prompt engineering with Azure OpenAI and my friend Marco. Marco, how you doing, my friend?
How you doing, Seth? I'm having a good day.
Fantastic. Oh, that's amazing. So why don't you tell us who you are and what you do first off?
All right, well, I'm Marco Casalaina, and I am the Vice President of Products for Azure Cognitive Services, and that includes Azure OpenAI, but it also includes our speech and language and vision and decision capabilities.
All the fun stuff that we've had on our show, tons of time. Before we even get going, ChatGPT has taken over, and obviously, it feels like a lot of woo kind of. Can you help us understand what you mean by the basics of prompt engineering, why all of this blew up, and what's so exciting about all of this?
Yes, so check this out, and you're going to see it in a minute.
Okay,
English is the hottest new programming language.
that's cool.
And I tell you, well, I'm paraphrasing Andre Carpathy, who used to be the head
Yep.
of Tesla AI, but anyway, the way that you set up ChatGPT, the way that it actually works behind the scenes, you will not believe it.
Yeah.
That's prompt engineering. What we call the prompt is how you feed it plain English
Mhm.
or any language really, and that's how it works. That's how you program it.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, this is just a model that you give English to, and then English comes out.
You could look at it that way. Other languages can come out too, but that's right. You can tell it what to do, and it will do that thing.
Now, I feel like it's got to be more technical than that. Is there stuff you can show us that gives us a sense for what's actually happening?
Why, it so happens that there is something I can show you. Let's take a
Cool
look.
beans.
All right, so check this out. We're going to start with Bing. And if you haven't tried the new Bing chat experience yet, it is pretty cool. And it's also based on GPT. In this case, this is actually GPT-4.
Mhm.
But regardless, it kind of works the same way. So let's see what happens when I say who I am and what I'm doing and what it kind of suggests to me. And then we're going to look at how this actually works behind the scenes. So here we go. It's doing some searches here. And this is something that Bing can do that the raw ChatGPT doesn't do. It can actually search the web, and that helps it inform its answers. And now here it comes. Prompt engineering, as it says, is an increasingly important skill set. And that is absolutely true. And that's why we're having this discussion.
Oh
And
my.
so, believe it or not, behind the scenes, the way that Bing is programmed is exactly what I'm about to do. You'll
All right,
never
well, let's take a
believe it
look.
until you see it. All
Let's
right,
take a look.
so now here we go. This is the administrative environment behind ChatGPT. So I'm in Azure OpenAI, and in here we have this new ChatGPT playground. And in the ChatGPT playground, well, I can have my own ChatGPT. And by the way, there's this common misconception that there is one ChatGPT, but that's not really true. There is one chat.openai.com, their consumer ChatGPT, but you can make your own ChatGPT with Azure OpenAI. So there can be many instances individually of ChatGPT, and this one is mine.
I see.
So here's what I'm going to do. All right. So this thing at the top here, the system message, or what we call the meta prompt, this is very important. This is where you give it its instructions. This is where you tell it what its tone should be. This is where you tell it what not to do. For example, maybe you want to say, don't make jokes about politicians or something like that.
Right.
So you give it all these instructions up here in the system message. And I've done none of that. So right now I got a wide open system message over here. And basically that means it'll talk about anything. So down here, let's say I wanted to talk about the Greek island of Santorini.
Okay.
All right. And, I submit that and there it goes. Okay. It's telling me whatever it remembers about Santorini. That's great. But let's say that, I'm a business, like let's say I'm Microsoft and I want to make my own instance of ChatGPT, but I only wanted to talk about Microsoft stuff. Like I
Got
don't
it.
just want to talk about whatever, right? So I'm going to have to program this thing so that it only talks about Microsoft stuff. And so over here, I have done just that. This here, this stuff, this is the programming. This is what I meant when I said English is the hottest new programming language. So Here I've written, you're an AI assistant called Softy. You help people find information about Microsoft products. You will decline to discuss any topic other than Microsoft products and services. So this is like a commandment. You will not talk about other stuff. And you'll end each response with an emoji. That's a Seth Juarez special. I know that's a meta prompt you like to add.
That's right.
I've seen you do it. And
That's right.
so now, down here I have it already typed in. Tell me about Santorini. Now, Santorini is not a Microsoft product. It is a Greek island. And it says, I'm sorry, but as an AI assistant, I can't provide information about Santorini because it's not a Microsoft product. Now, of course, if I ask it about a Microsoft thing, does Microsoft offer M365 in Germany, for example, that most certainly will work.
So as it's answering, I'm going to ask a couple questions. That's okay. So this here that I'm looking at, and look, it did the right answer, of course. This thing I'm looking at, this is like Chat GPT, but specific to you. Can you explain what we're looking at? This Chrome here.
Yeah, so this stuff we're looking at here, this is my Chat GPT, right? I got my own Chat GPT, and the data that goes in and out of this Chat GPT, and that could be these prompts or the responses, that's my data. And I get to keep that data, and that data doesn't go back and go train other GPTs or anything like that. This is my own instance of Chat GPT that I can program in any way that I want.
And this here is just basically a playground where you can test stuff out. But is there like an API endpoint as well that you can use that's only for you and your business?
Absolutely, absolutely. So when I make a deployment over here, that creates an API endpoint that I can now use to call my ChatGPT from my own business, my own website, my own mobile app, whatever.
And that's what it's meant then by Azure OpenAI when you're using Azure, specifically cognitive services with your own OpenAI cognitive service, you effectively have your own model for your own data for your own stuff.
That's right. That's what it is.
Amazing. All right, well keep showing us more stuff. This is cool.
All right. So there is more. There is more. Okay. So uh, now there's something that Bing did that you might have noticed here that this raw ChatGPT over here, my own ChatGPT, didn't do. Bing did something very interesting here. See, when you submit a prompt to ChatGPT, we call each one of these things a prompt. Uh, when you submit a prompt to ChatGPT, it just spits out whatever it knows from memory. So it just kind of remembered that yes, Microsoft offers Microsoft 365 in Germany, but it didn't really go look that up to verify that that's true in any way. Bing, on the other hand, does do that. So you notice when I made this query here, it actually went and looked up prompt engineering for ChatGPT, and it used that information that it found. So it found this information from all these sites over here, and it used this information to give me this response. So it didn't
Right.
just make the response from memory; it's grounded in data.
Of
So
course.
now, let's say again that I have my own business. Let's say I'm Microsoft. And I would like to put up a conversational experience, but unlike Bing, I don't just want it to hit whatever on the web. I want to specifically say, there are these sets of data that I would like it to be able to consider in making its response. So I can do that. And so here, I'm going to show you both how to do that. And also, I'm going to kind of peel back the covers a little bit on how Bing is doing this. So y'all can get a look at what's really
This is
happening
cool.
under
This is
here.
cool. I'm excited. I'm excited.
It's going to be cool. All right, so here's the deal. So I have made this bot. Actually, my colleague Pablo made this bot. And this is ChatGPT on top of Azure Cognitive Search. And Azure Cognitive Search is a search engine, but unlike Bing, it doesn't just automatically index the whole web. It's a search engine that you tell it what to look for. And you say, I only want you to consider these URLs, these documents, and it'll do that. And so we have this Azure Cognitive Search, and it is searching across our employer health plan. Let's say that I'm making a kind of an HR benefits bot for my internal employees. So we have all these documents in here in the search engine about our health plan. And I'm going to ask, does my plan cover new glasses? And here we have it. It gives me this response. It does cover new glasses, actually. That's great. It tells me the different kinds of plans and so on. And this is a conversation I can actually keep going with this because it's asking me for more information. But like Bing, you notice that it did a query and it actually is returning also citations, but these citations are documents that I am indexing that might be only inside my business and might not be publicly available on the web. What's really interesting here is if we look at, and this is maybe something I wouldn't show, my employees or whatever, but I love this tab, the thought process. They call it the thought process. And so here's what it was thinking, so to speak, in informing this. So I asked this question up here, does my plan cover new glasses? And it didn't just send that straight to ChatGPT. And this is ChatGPT that's running behind this. But it didn't just send it straight to ChatGPT. Instead, it actually generated a query from that first, employee benefits glasses coverage. So it decided to go query that. And it found some documents about that, employee benefits glasses coverage. So before this ever got to ChatGPT, it did this query and it found these documents. And one of the things that cognitive search does is it chunks up the document. So it can take little individual pieces of the documents, because what is also true about ChatGPT is that there is a token limit. You can only give it so many characters in your prompt before it kind of throws up.
Right.
So you can't just throw all your documents in there. That'll never work. You have to have a search engine that will find the most relevant little bits and say, these things are relevant. And then you can kind of throw that in there, which we'll get into in just a minute. So we did this query. And finally, everything under the prompt in this thought process is what it's actually feeding to ChatGPT. So it's feeding to ChatGPT all this stuff down here. This first part is the meta prompt. It's kind of like what I just did. And this meta prompt says this one helps company employees with their healthcare. And it also says, don't generate answers that don't use the sources below. So don't just generate whatever, right? Only if it has substantiation and so on. So there's a number of instructions in here. And then right into the prompt itself, we are injecting the data that it looked up. These are the pieces of documents that it found. And we're giving this directly to ChatGPT. And finally, underneath all of that is my little question. Does my plan cover new glasses? So ChatGPT by itself could not possibly answer this question without this data grounding. In fact, if I go back into the raw ChatGPT and I say, does my plan cover new glasses? That is going to give me a nonsensical response because it has no idea what I'm talking about here. I'm sorry. At least it knows it doesn't know. But here, it has all of this information to use, and it does use that information to form this response right here that it's created. And so this is how you're able to inject your own data into ChatGPT, which incidentally is covered in this blog post by my colleague Pablo. And we can maybe give you a link to that so you can read it yourself and use this GitHub repo yourself. But this is fundamentally how all of these things like Bing actually work.
So to summarize, because I mean, I think this should be surprising to people because you kind of like rip the hood off. Basically, what you've done to make it answer specific internal questions is you've captured the question, you've done a search in Azure Cognitive Search in this case, injected relevant documentation, then pretended the chat is going on at the bottom, and then you left off the answer and you said, generate the next most likely thing.
I mean, that's effectively what the model is doing, but it sure does give me a good answer, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, not only does it give you an answer, and that's the cool thing. Sorry, my phone AI was trying to, my watch AI thought I was trying to talk to it. Go figure. We're having a little inception moment. So it's able to actually give you reference to the specific documentation, because there is this problem where, and I don't like the term hallucinate because my sense is it's always making up the next n tokens. But there's a sense that sometimes it's telling you stuff that it's just making up and it's not factual. I love that there's actual, like, go to the document, we'll show you.
Hey, and you know what's really, I mean, because it has this instruction at the top that says, only give an answer if you have the information. If I ask it something that it doesn't have information on, what's the best surfboard wax? That's not in my health plan. And if I ask it that, I'm sorry, I don't know. None of the sources I have mention surfboard wax, and it's true. So you can kind of restrict its domain both through that meta prompt that we saw, and also through the data that you're searching over. Now,
And
but wait, Hold
Okay, but
on.
there's more.
There's more, but actually what I'm trying to say is there's less because there's something that I totally did not do here. I don't know if you caught this. What I didn't do in any of this, I did not train a model. I didn't fine tune a model. I didn't do anything with a model. I am using the stock. This is the ChatGPT Turbo model, and this is definitely the best model to use to get started with Azure OpenAI today. For just about anything you can think of, you want to start with this one. I understand GPT-4 is now in public preview, and that's cool, but GPT-3.5 Turbo is great. It's fast, it's inexpensive, and it gets the job done. And that's where you want to start. I didn't do anything to this model. I am using the stock model out of the box, fresh from the dealer. I'm using it here and here and here.
Hold
So
on. So hold on, because I want to make sure that I'm understanding this right. You're saying that all that with the meta prompt and the injecting documentation, you just send it to the API without doing anything else.
that is what I'm saying. Now, of course, we did have to prepare the search index up front, right? So we had to set up Azure Cognitive Search and tell it what documents we wanted it to index and do the connection, which is what Pablo details in this blog post. But I didn't train a model. That I did not do.
And that's cool because like everyone knows about search things. And if you're trying to just generate the best output text, now I'm getting a sense for you basically in the meta prompt, give it instructions, you stuff the relevant content, however you want to do that, into the prompt, and then magic comes out.
That's right. And all of these things that you've been hearing about, Bing, M365 chat, the Dynamics Copilot, this is how they all work. All of them. This is fundamentally what they're all doing.
This is amazing. And this stuff is all available now, or do folks have to
Now,
wait?
everything I'm showing you here today is public.
Well, this is amazing, and like I said, I if you haven't tried this, like there, and I'm not using hyperbole here. There's few moments in tech where you're like, oh, that was an inflection point. It feels like this is an inflection point. What say you, Marco?
That's what I'm talking about. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy that you can do this, but you really can.
And that's amazing. So, Marco, thank you so much for spending some time with us, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Marco has been unveiling the mask of what's going on with ChatGPT by showing us the basics of prompt engineering with Azure OpenAI. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Take care.